who was a great visionary in this area. And with his dream, we are working hard under the guidance of Honorable Prashant Malak and Honorable Rohan Malak. And really we are striving hard and trying to provide a world-class technical education to the students. We have all the facilities on the campus with state-of-art laboratories. And we are very experienced and dedicated faculty who are really working hard to prepare our students to be absorbed in industries. So without wasting much of time, we are eager to listen Alima Patil ma'am. So once again, I welcome Patil ma'am and Aradhya sir for this today's webinar. And with all the best wishes to this program, I take your leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Patil sir, whether directly you will go to Abhijit Aradhya sir's speech or
No, direct Aradhya sir will speak and then madam.
Okay. So thank you, sir, for expressing your views. Now I request our special guest Abhijit Ji Aradhya to share his views in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I will keep short. Although I'm mechanical come software engineer, I have a lot of interest in space related activities and those companies. Those companies might be the SpaceX, Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic. Due to this interest, 3 years back, I come across the Alima madam. And maybe around 2 years back, we conducted a full day in-person workshop in Charlotte, NC. And for that session, she fly from Houston to Charlotte, and it was attended by more than 200 people, or you can say space lovers. I'm in US for the 12 years, but still I'm very much emotionally attached to Pandharpur. That's my hometown. That's where idea came. Why can't we arrange such sessions for our own people? And this is just one way to give back to my hometown good thoughts, or to inspire the next generations to achieve new heights or think bigger in life. Thanks, Sri Rohan Paricharak, Professor Patil, and my friend Professor Abhut Patsar for arranging it. Let's think it as a first step and see how we can work together on such a good ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Aradhya sir. So now it's time to listen our today's eminent speaker, respected Patil madam. So without wasting much of time, I request Honorable Chief Guest of today's international webinar, Mrs. Alima Patil-Sabale madam, to take the charge and start today's session. Thank you.
Sounds good. And thank you for that introduction. Thank you to you for the introduction, and thank you to Patil sir for the welcome. And Abhijita, thank you for this invitation. I can't be in Pandharpur in person. I think I've been to Pandharpur when I was a little girl. So it's been years, but I am thinking of it as this is my virtual visit today. So whenever you guys go to the temple, do a namaskar for me to the gods, okay? To Vitthal Bhagwan. So
okay, madam.
All right, with that. Yeah, so thank you. It's an honor to be sharing my experiences and what we're doing here at NASA. And I'm really excited to share this with you. I cannot share my screen though. So, okay, now I can, it seems. Okay. Earlier when I tried, it wouldn't allow me to share. All right, so here goes. What I've done is, this is a deck of slides that I've been generally sharing with everyone, but today Did someone say something? I think someone has a hot mic. Can you please mute yourselves? Everyone? All right. So,
Yes, madam.
yeah.
Just a second, madam. 1 minute. Chaugale
Yeah.
sir, please mute all the audience except chief guest.
Okay.
Chaugale sir, please mute
Yes.
everybody.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, madam.
Cool. Thank you.
Please continue.
No worries at all. There's a lot I want to share, and we have a time that I want to make sure we complete this, and so it will be good because my chain of thought gets broken then if there's a noise in the background. But okay, so moving on. So this is a deck of slides that I have where I talk about two things actually: the challenges we have as humanity to become a spacefaring species. And the second is my own personal challenges where I've grown up with this childhood dream. And even at this stage and age in life, I'm trying to pursue that dream. These are both impossible things that we're trying to make possible. But so there are slides, a mix of slides. I try to explain the challenges of deep space travel by combining it with my own personal adventures or astronautics experiences that I've been pursuing. But today I'll focus on the Artemis missions and the lunar gateway and why we're going back to the moon and what are we doing, how are we going to do that. So that's going to be the focus of today's talk. I will just talk a little bit about myself in the beginning and then we will dive into Artemis. So just to share, just so you all know, I'm going to try to summarize this in a little bit. But pictures speak louder than words, right? So I have these pictures here. But I grew up in Jalgaon, wanting to become an astronaut. It's been a childhood dream since 7 years. Grew up trying to figure out how am I going to do this. This was in the 80s. We had no internet, no social media, right? So reading newspapers, magazines, and following whatever was going on around the world in the US and the Russian space program especially. And that was my only way of figuring out how to go about becoming an astronaut. And then Rakesh Sharmaji flew through the Russian space program, so wanted to become a fighter pilot. That didn't come to fruition. I ended up becoming a software engineer. I did my bachelor's in physics in Jalgaon. And that was because I wanted to join the Indian Air Force to become a fighter pilot, so I would have a chance at becoming an astronaut. And then my dad's condition was you have to study here in Jalgaon itself. I won't be able to send you outside. So a bachelor's in physics or a bachelor's in engineering was the requirement to join the Indian Air Force. And physics was the option available to me. And I was also interested in physics. So I pursued that. Brought the Air Force application, couldn't apply because of first condition was you have to be a male. You cannot be, so they were not accepting women as fighter pilots at that time, right? So I couldn't even apply. But even then I was going to go ahead and apply. But the second criteria was you need to have a perfect 20/20 vision, which I fell short in. I had a slight myopia at that time. And so I couldn't apply. And then I ended up becoming a software engineer, did my master's in computer applications at the North Maharashtra University. I worked in Mumbai for a couple of years. And then I came to California, San Jose in California as a software engineer. While working there, so all my astronaut dreams and plans had fallen behind, right? But while working in California, I was watching the space shuttles launch quite frequently. We were building the space station in orbit around the Earth. And there was a NASA center near me. And that's when that dormant dream started beckoning me again. This is my chance to do something about it. So even though someone has a hot mic, can you please mute it? So even though I was 30 years, I had a 3-year-old son and I had a full-time job, I decided to do a second master's in aerospace engineering because that had been an interest, did not get the opportunities until now. So why not now? It's never too late in life. So I did the second master's in aerospace engineering and it was a field that I'm glad I did that because it taught me so much about rockets and airplanes and how things work. And that was what I had always been interested in, right? So San Jose State University is where I did that master's. And then I got the opportunity to work at NASA after I became a US citizen on the Kepler mission. I worked on the Kepler mission in California at the NASA Ames Research Center while working there, I started sharing about Kepler, doing talks. I became a NASA speaker, basically, talking about the Kepler mission. And then people started getting more interested in my own personal journey. How did I end up from Jalgaon to NASA? And so I started sharing about my journey. And I also kept looking for opportunities on how can I gain experiences in astronautics, basically, because I have still been an engineer, right? And my interest has been in becoming an astronaut. So that is how I started to learn flying airplanes. And I became a scientist astronaut candidate for a commercial suborbital spaceflight research program. I trained as a scientist astronaut candidate. I participated in NASA's human exploration research missions, so as a test subject, basically. So these are the kind of things I started doing after I joined NASA and building up my skills so that I am qualified enough to be an astronaut, right? While doing that, I decided to pursue a third master's in space studies human factors, because now that we are going to travel to Moon and Mars, it's necessary for us to engineer and build systems that are safe for humans, right? Because space is an extreme environment, and make sure our astronauts not only stay safe, but feel comfortable when they are working in space is really important. I can hear myself. Okay, Vaishnavi, can you please mute your mic? Vaishnavi. Prathamesh, Vaishnavi, I can hear you guys, and it's distracting. All right, so, and now finally, recently I'm pursuing a PhD in systems engineering because that helps me tie together everything. We are building engineering new systems, right? And so it's been an area of interest as well. So these are the kind of things I'm doing. As you see, I've been keeping India alive here in the US as well through my participation in cultural activities. I'm a Boy Scouts leader as well, and so on and so forth. So I love sharing my experiences and journey with the younger generation, because I feel I missed out on the guidance growing up. So I want to give that to the younger generation to hopefully help them find reach their goals sooner than I could, right? I'm still not an astronaut, and it's a very challenging thing. Becoming an astronaut is kind of like an impossible thing. There is a 0.001% probability if you apply, you will get picked, because think about this. Just last round of selection, there were 12,000 people who applied, and NASA selected only 10 or 12 of them. I don't remember the exact. So you can imagine how fierce the competition is, and everyone is really extremely qualified. But I know that it was kind of late when I started this journey, and so I might not reach that goal or that destination, but I want to enjoy this journey while I'm pursuing that goal. No matter what, once I'll have the satisfaction that I tried, right? And that's what's important. Enjoying the journey, gaining those experiences is what's important. And I think even being here at NASA, being able to be a part of these missions is really an important thing to me, and it gives me a good satisfaction as well. It's fulfilling, and then being able to share all these things with you all, that's fulfilling as well. So that has been what I've been doing. These are some pictures from some of my talks. This is a summary. Today I am the project engineering lead at NASA's Johnson Space Center for the Lunar Gateway Mission Control Center Systems. And what that is actually, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but let me tell you what we do here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. It's basically the home of astronauts. NASA has about 7 centers around the US. Johnson Space Center is the home of astronauts. Astronauts live here, train here, and we build, there are missions here that are involved in leading or building spacecrafts, for example, for astronauts to go to the Moon and Mars right now. There were shuttle programs that were managed from here as well and launched from Kennedy Space Center. So these are the kind of human spaceflight related activities that go on here at NASA Johnson Space Center. Before this role, I was the Orion spacecraft simulations lab manager. Orion is the spacecraft that our astronauts will be going to the moon and Mars. And this is the picture here of the Orion spacecraft, a visualization of how it will look once it's launched. This is Mission Control Center. If you look at this, this is the International Space Station Mission Control Center. And I got to visit that, and that's when this picture was taken. But what a Mission Control Center is where the flight controllers, they run these missions basically. When the astronauts launch or fly, for example, on the space station today, we have astronauts, right? There are always astronauts on board the space station at any point of time. So their schedules, the work that they're going to do, everything needs to be managed. And that is done from here in the Mission Control Center. How is the storage going to look on the space station? Where will we fit what? Because there is a limited amount of real estate there. So how are we going to do that? There is a separate team of flight controllers who takes care of that. There is a separate team who manages the trajectory for the space station. So there are different teams involved of flight controllers, and they work from here in the Mission Control Center. A similar Mission Control Center is now being built for the Lunar Gateway, which is going to be an orbiting outpost around the moon, an orbiting space station, basically, a smaller miniature version of the International Space Station today, but I'm sure it will grow over time. But we are going to have a Mission Control Center here at NASA Johnson Space Center for the Lunar Gateway. And that is the project I'm leading right now, setting up that Missions Control Center from the ground up. While here, I get to meet astronauts. When I was managing the Orion spacecraft simulation lab, we had another lab where the astronauts would come to train. So this is Sunita Williams, ma'am, no introduction needed. This is Josh Casara. They were here for training, and I got to meet them. This is the Orion spacecraft mock-up behind me here. I also got to work for a small amount of time on NASA's newest spacesuit called the XEMU. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And this is a picture in one of our labs where we were setting up and testing out the displays that will be on the Orion spacecraft. So I got to check those out. Here I'm participating as a human test subject. It's a voluntary thing I do in addition to my full-time role. But yes, as I said, there is a lot of research going on how to keep our astronauts safe in space, right? And so this is one of those researches. I'm wearing a virtual reality goggle on and what I see in front of me is the surface of Mars. When astronauts arrive on the surface of Mars, they will have traveled in zero gravity for almost 6 to 7 months, right? And what that does to the human body is, because in zero gravity, you're floating, right? You're not walking. There is no surface or there is no gravity basically to have a sense of up or down or any direction. And so you're not walking, you're floating in space. And what that does to our legs and our muscle and bone is, it causes us to lose bone and muscle. It's called bone and muscle atrophy. So when they come back here on Earth, even then, if you've seen the astronauts return from space, they need a little help. They cannot just jump out and start walking and doing things. They need to adapt to the gravity. They've been in zero gravity. Their body is not used to walking or doing things on the surface in gravity, basically. And so they need to adapt to that gravity. And that takes some time. But when they arrive on Mars, here on Earth, they have help, right? We go out there. There is a team that goes out there when they land. They have a lot of assistance in getting out of the spacecraft and getting to wherever they need to be, and then start adapting back to gravity by performing some exercises. But when they arrive on Mars, there will be no one there to help. So how do we train them to, when they arrive, how can they just get out and start working and doing things? What kind of training do we need to do? That's what we are trying to research here. So there is an electrical stimulus being passed behind my ear to the neurovestibular organ. There is a neurovestibular organ that we have behind our ears. And that is responsible for keeping us oriented. That gives us a sense of direction, up and down, right? That sense that I was talking about. So if you pass electrical stimulus to that organ, what will happen? You will get disoriented. And that's what we are trying to do here. Trying to get me disoriented and then have me perform some tasks to see how I will do when I'm arriving on Mars, right? So these are the kind of studies I get to participate here at NASA's Johnson Center as a human test subject. I have to go through a lot of physical exams and to make sure I'm physically fit to be a human test subject. But that's okay. That's a part of fun, all the fun experience, and that also tells me how I'm doing physically, right? So being physically fit is really important, not only to become an astronaut, but in general, in any role in life, right? So keep that as your priority. Having good habits, not getting into bad habits, all those things that, yeah, I talk about that quite a bit, but I'm going to skip that for now. But yes, next, moving on, I've worked on the Kepler mission. This was my first NASA mission that I got to work on. Kepler is a school bus-sized telescope that was launched in 2009 to look for Earth-like planets around sun-like stars in our galaxy. So what we are trying to do basically with Kepler was, we were trying to look for an Earth 2.0. Is there a second Earth? Is there life? Is there a planet like ours? Because this has been a question that humanity has had since ancient times. Are there people like us out there? Is there intelligent life like us out there, right? So this is NASA's way, first step of trying to answer that question. How do we do that? If there are planets like the Earth, that means there is a possibility of life on that, because Earth has all the factors needed to support life, water, air, a breathable atmosphere, right? So that is the kind of planet we are looking for. And in that process, Kepler has found a lot of planets, thousands of them. And we found some Earth-like planets, but they're orbiting sun-like stars. They're orbiting M dwarfs, not sun-like stars. So we cannot exactly say that we found an Earth 2.0, but it's interesting that we found a lot of Earth-like planets around M dwarf stars. M dwarfs are smaller, cooler, dimmer stars than our sun. Our sun is a G dwarf, right? So how that star interacts with its planet is quite different from how our sun interacts with our Earth. And so again, there is a lot I can talk on this as well. I have actually a separate. I have a separate deck of slides where I talk about the Kepler mission, but I just wanted to give you guys a little introduction. I got to work on a supercomputer, NASA's supercomputer Pleiades, when I worked on the Kepler mission. And this is a hyperwall. We call it a hyperwall. It's connected to the supercomputer. All this data about these stars and the planets around them is coming and being displayed on this hyperwall. And I got to visit that. So it was an amazing experience working on the Kepler mission as well. It was because of my interest in astronomy and my aerospace and software background. That role was really a good start and gave me a good insight on one kind of planetary research work that NASA does as well as an astronaut. So now we've been here, we've been to the moon, we've built the space station in orbit around the Earth. Now what's next? These are our destinations.
Yes, ma'am.
What? Did someone say something? Is there a question? Okay, never mind. So yeah, we'll be going to Mars. We'll be going to these few habitable planets in the future, right? In the distant future, not, I don't know if our generation, our couple of generations will be able to, but we are laying the foundation for our future generations to get to these destinations. But when we are planning to go to these destinations, I don't understand why. Aditya Kamble, can you please mute your mic? A lot of noise, guys. It's really difficult to talk when there is this background noise. I really appreciate, can you make sure you mute your mics or just drop off if you have to talk to someone while you're on here. I'm sorry, but it's really distracting and I can't focus on what I'm saying. Anyways, so we need to prepare for deep space travel. We're not there yet. We need a technology. Now I'm a space movie buff, and that is the reason why I have these pictures from these movies. I don't know if you've watched these, but yes, this is a picture from Star Trek, the Starship Enterprise. These are pictures from the Interstellar, and this is the picture from the Martian. So why I have these here is because we need a technology like this, the Starship Enterprise. It flies at it has a hyperdrive that helps it fly faster than the speed of light, right? We need a technology like that to be able to travel faster and get to these planets that are out there light years away in a matter of months at least. With today's technology, we have the Voyager spacecrafts that have crossed into the interstellar space. I don't know how many of you have heard about this. In 1977, NASA launched 2 spacecrafts to study the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, the outer planets, right? In 1977, those spacecrafts have since then been traveling. They took pictures of Jupiter, Saturn's moon, and they sent those to us. But then they are now even traveling further. They crossed the solar system. Can you believe that? First man-made spacecrafts that have crossed the solar system, and they're traveling into interstellar space. They're like our messengers out there in space now. But even at the speed that they're traveling, and they're traveling really fast, I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but at the speed that they're traveling, even at that speed, they will reach the closest star, which is Alpha Centauri star system. They will reach that star system in 40,000 years, and they're traveling at a mind-boggling speed already. So imagine that. Even the closest star to us is 4 light years away. And with the current technology, it's going to take us 40,000 years to get that far. So how many years do we live, right? You can imagine. It is impossible for us to travel to the closest star even in our lifetimes. So we need some technology, propulsion technology, that will help us travel at least closer to the speed of light for now. And yes, there is a lot of research people are doing on that. And so hopefully we will have something soon, if not in the next 10, 20 years, maybe in the next 100 years. The other thing that we need is a spacesuit that will help our astronauts move around easily, work on the surfaces of these planets when we arrive on them. Even Moon and Mars, for example, the spacesuit that we have today, it's really heavy, it's really bulky, and it's the spacesuit from the 1980s era. And so it's old basically, right? Since then, technology has advanced so much. But this spacesuit weighs 250 pounds today, the one that the astronauts use on the International Space Station. And it is not very flexible. So the astronauts actually get bruised at times on their elbows and wrists and their fingers. They get bruised. And they have to, so there is no flexibility. They are heavy. They're not very comfortable to work in, but we don't even have enough sizes. We have just 2 sizes right now, large and medium. And shorter astronauts, especially female astronauts who are a little shorter, they have a little challenge when they're working from those spacesuits. So because they're huge, right? And so they have to adapt. And so astronauts train for hours here on the surface of Earth to practice for their spacewalks when they're going to go work on those spacewalks when they arrive at the space station. So these are the challenges we need to overcome, and that is why we need a new spacesuit. So basically, we need a new propulsion technology and a new spacesuit. These are just 2 things. We will also need habitats. That means homes that we can build on the surface of Moon and Mars when we arrive there, because the air there is not breathable. It's toxic. So we need to create a breathable environment for them. So a lot of research needs to be done, and a lot of technology needs to be built before we can send our astronauts anywhere in deep space. And that is where humanity's return to the moon comes in picture. And these missions are called the Artemis missions. Why are they called Artemis? So there's a little story behind that. Apollo missions were the first missions when we sent astronauts, the only missions actually, when we landed astronauts on the moon, right? Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. Those were all Apollo missions when we landed first humans on the moon. Since then, we haven't gone back, and now we are planning to go back to the moon. But at that time, there were no female astronauts involved. There were no female astronauts even existing in the NASA's astronaut corps. But today we have female astronauts, and the plan with these missions is the first Artemis mission is going to have the first female and the next man on the surface of the moon in 2024. because we are involving a female, so these missions are called Artemis, because in Greek mythology, Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo. See, you see that connection there? So Apollo and Artemis were twins, and she was a twin sister of Apollo. And because we are sending the first female, and there will be more female astronauts to follow, hence the name Artemis for these missions. And it's going to happen in phases. There'll be Artemis 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll just keep on progressing in that manner. But yes, Artemis is humanity's return to the moon. Now, why moon, people ask? Well, we've already been to the moon, right? Some people say we've already been to the moon, so why go back? So the goal is we go back because, yes, we want to go to Mars, but Mars is about 300,000 million miles away from us. Okay, that's a long distance. It takes 6 to 7 months with the current technology we have to get to Mars. And if we send astronauts there, we want them to at least live there and research, and we want to send them with supplies. But a Mars mission is going to be not just a 6-month mission. It just takes that long to get there. Then they'll stay on the surface. Then they'll come back. That will take another 6 months. So that's 1 whole year in just going and coming back. And then you have to stay on the surface and do some research at least. So even if we assume 6 months to stay on the surface or a year, that becomes a 1.5 to 2 year mission. We also have to wait for that launch window when Earth and Mars, they are right next to each other, close to each other. And that window occurs only once every 2 years. So all other times, Earth and Mars are really far away from each other when they're in their orbits around the sun, right? So you need to have them both next to each other with the minimum distance between them to save you fuel and time, right? Travel time and the fuel that you need to get there. That 2 year launch window is also important to keep in mind when we are planning these missions to Mars. So if we are basically looking at a minimum of 2 to 2.5 year duration for a Mars mission. So can we just send our astronauts today and leave them there to do their research without any untested technologies? No, we do not have habitats that we have tested out where they can live safely in the harsh Martian environment. Mars has dust storms. And so where are they going to live? They can't live in a small spacecraft for a long time, right? So we need those habitats to have a livable environment. They need to have supplies. How many supplies can we send from Earth at a time? Maybe for a crew of 2 or 3, we can send a 4-month supply from the surface of Earth with them. We cannot send more because of the restriction we have on how much payload we can launch from the surface of Earth, right? So that is one challenge. And with only 4 months of supply, how are they going to survive for the rest of their time on Mars? We can't keep sending supplies quite often. It becomes expensive as well. So we need to plan these things out. We need to have them use the water, for example. We found a lot of carbon ice on the surface of Mars, in the polar region especially. So we can make use of that carbon ice, right? We can process that and make it into drinkable water. But where is the technology for that? We need to develop or engineer some mechanism to do that, some system that will do that. So these are the kind of technologies we need to first research, and then test them out. We cannot just test them at a distance of 300,000 million miles away from Earth. What if they don't work? What if they break? We will be almost leaving our astronauts to die there, basically. And we don't want to do that. So where do we test it? Here on Earth, if we test, is it any use? Yes, we will do the preliminary testing here on Earth. But the Earth's atmosphere is really protective, right? There's no extreme radiation, solar ionizing radiation that the machinery or the systems that we engineer, they will get exposed to when they are on Moon and Mars. There is no protective atmosphere there, so they will be exposed to that radiation. There are also extreme temperatures that the systems need to be tested for that are on Moon and Mars. And so to test these technologies out, we want to do that closer to Earth. So what is another place that is just similar to Mars in the extreme atmosphere from that perspective. That's the moon, right? Moon is just a day or two away from us. So a trip to moon can be like 3 to 4 days, for example, at the max. And if something breaks, if something doesn't work, our astronauts can come back. So we start with shorter duration missions to the moon. Like the first mission is going to be just a week-long mission. And we help the astronauts set those technology, the habitats, the water processing systems. So all these, we help them set them up on the surface of the moon. We use the moon as a proving ground or a test bed to test out our technologies, basically. And that is the reason why we are going back to the moon, to use it as a test bed, to use it as a proving ground for our technologies. So we can send our astronauts to Mars one day and they will be Earth independent. Right now, the space station, this is the International Space Station. It is Earth dependent. We are sending supplies for astronauts to the space station regularly. It is in orbit around the Earth, 250 miles above the surface of Earth. So it is still kind of in closer to the Earth and protected from that extreme amount of radiation that the moon and Mars are otherwise exposed to. But yes, we cannot keep these missions that are going to be on Mars dependent on Earth. They cannot be really heavily dependent on Earth. And to make them independent, to establish sustainable base on Mars, we are going to use the moon as a test bed. Robotic lunar surface exploration rovers, we will have those as well. So that is the reason why we are going back to the moon. How are we going to go? We're going to use the NASA's newest rocket, the Space Launch System. It's going to be the most powerful rocket we've ever built. Humanity has ever built, actually. This is the Space Launch System rocket. And that's Orion, that's going to be on the top of the rocket. This rocket is going to help us take astronauts to the moon and then eventually to Mars. Saturn V was the most powerful until now, 7.5 million pounds of thrust. This one is going to have more cargo. I mean, the cargo is going to be 8.8 million pounds. And it's going to have 13% more thrust than the space shuttle and 15% more than Saturn V during liftoff and azimuths. That is why we're saying it's the most powerful rocket. A little more detail on the rocket. We have the RS-25 engines here, solid rocket boosters. This is the Orion's spacecraft here, the crew module. And that's the launch abort system. That is something new we have. So if something goes wrong during the launch, this launch abort system with the Orion capsule attached to it detaches from the rocket and it comes back and lands the astronauts safely, so we don't have mishaps like we've had in the past. So that this whole unit is called the Orion Multi-Purpose Crew Vehicle. And this is the amount of thrust these engines are going to provide to this cryogenic propulsion stage, which is the little rocket system for the upper stage propulsion. And this is our spacecraft, the Orion spacecraft. It's a visualization of the spacecraft. It is going to be powered by the solar panels. It has in four directions here. And it's going to be able to accommodate 7 astronauts, but initially we are just sending 2 and then maybe at the most 4. So Artemis 1 is when we're going to launch the first mission, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is the lunar gateway, the orbiting outpost or the orbiting space station that I mentioned about to you guys earlier. So this is what we are going to launch and then eventually start building up on. It is going to be in an orbit around the moon. Okay, so this will be like a stopover for astronauts before they get to the surface of the moon. And then eventually it will also be like a stopover on future missions that will be going to Mars. And so these are a few modules in this picture on the lunar gateway. This is the Orion spacecraft. It comes and docks to the gateway, and then there will be other visiting vehicles like the SpaceX will have their Dragons flying to the lunar gateway as well, and we might have more private companies come up with spacecrafts that will go and dock here. Even the cargo ships will arrive and dock to the lunar gateway. So in my current role, I am leading this project to help build a mission control center for the lunar gateway. So we work really closely with the teams that are actually building this lunar gateway. We have 2 partners who are working on building these modules. Different modules by different partners are being built right now to put this lunar gateway together. And this is how we're building it. There are different space agencies involved. ESA is European Space Agency. They are building these Spirit module. JAXA and ESA together are building the International Habitation Module. Canadian Space Agency, they're going to have the robotics arm like they have the one today on the space station. US will have its habitation module as well. And then there will be a multi-purpose module where we'll have spacecrafts come and dock. This is a logistics resupply. So this is how the gateway is going to come together. In 2025, which will be the first launch of 2 modules for the gateway, we're going to launch this one, Power and Propulsion Unit. And where is the Halo? This is an old picture. I need to update it. I think it's this logistics resupply. They will be attached to each other. And those are the only 2 modules we're launching in 2025. The PPE, the Power Propulsion Element, and the Halo, Habitation and Logistics module. So that will be either this one, I think. But these are the 2 modules that will be launching in 2025. And then we will have following missions that will start bringing more modules and connecting them while they're orbiting the moon. And after we build the gateway, then what's next? We have the human landing system. Right now, I think SpaceX is having contract to build the human landing system, or the HLS. So this is the system that will take, or the spacecraft that will take our astronauts to the surface of the moon in the Artemis missions. So this will dock to the gateway, and then it will land on the surface. The Artemis 1, I don't think it's going to dock to the gateway, but eventually Artemis 2 onwards, this lander will always be docked to the gateway, and the astronauts will get into this, and then they'll go to the surface of the moon. So that's coming up next. And then these are the technologies we are right now working on at NASA to establish a sustainable lunar base camp, base camp on the surface of the moon for our astronauts to live and work from. So this is how NASA is preparing for the lunar surface missions, or to establish a sustainable base on the surface of the moon. So the first mission in the Artemis series is Artemis 1, which is happening this year. It was going to launch in June, but it went on the launch pad. There were some wet dress rehearsals, and there were some problems discovered at that time. And so NASA has been working on fixing those and testing those out again. But I think August is when we're tentatively looking at a launch of Artemis 1. So this is going to be the trajectory, the flight path for the Orion and SLS system, Artemis 1 flight. It is going to be an uncrewed flight, no astronauts on board, because this is a test flight. The spacecraft will fly around the moon and come back to Earth and land successfully. So it will be a test flight, but it will still be a spacecraft that has gone the furthest ever that any spacecraft that is capable of carrying humans has gone. So there was a test. The first test was in 2014. Orion orbited the Earth and then it came back. That was a successful test flight. This will be the second one with Artemis 1. Then in Artemis 2, we will have 2 astronauts on the spacecraft. They will travel around the moon and they will come back. They will not be landing yet. That will be another test flight. So, and then finally in Artemis 3 in 2024, we will be having boots on the ground. What that means is we will have the first female astronaut and the next man or the next man on the Orion spacecraft, and they will land on the surface of the moon. So that will be when we will actually land on the moon. 2024 is the target right now. But yes, this talks about the flight path for Orion. It goes around the moon. It's going to fly back. I will not delve into the details of this, but those are our machines that we talked about, how we are going to get our astronauts there. But there are a few challenges, and I'm not going to get into a lot of these right now. I want to give you all an opportunity to ask some questions, but in the maybe next 5 or 10 minutes, I'll breeze through these slides, okay? Just to give you an idea, what are the challenges that we are trying to overcome? See, the human body has been designed to live and work here in the safe environment of Earth, right? We are not designed to survive in the vacuum of space. It's a vacuum, there's no breathable air. That will kill you instantly in a minute or two. The radiation that we're exposed to, that will kill us instantly as well. And then you need water, which is not there in space. So there are all these factors. And then in zero gravity, like I said, you lose bone and muscle and you lose your orientation. So if we want to become a spacefaring species, because humanity is not going to stop, because space is the next frontier, right? And we should go and explore it. Why not? But we need to develop those technologies to keep our astronauts safe. We do have technologies that we use on the space station today, but like I said, they are not enough because the space station is closer to the surface of Earth. Those missions are really short duration. Now we are looking at longer periods in space, in deep space. And so these technologies of today on the space station are not going to be enough for us to be able to live and thrive in the extreme environment of space for longer durations. So let's take a quick look at what these physio-psychological impact. Physio means physical challenges, and then psychological is all, you know, what how it affects your psychology when you are in the isolation environment of space. So like I said, radiation, solar radiation, cosmic radiation, intergalactic radiation, it's extreme, and you're exposed to that and your body will be immediately impacted. You will die instantly. Ionizing radiation attacks your body at the cellular level, even the DNA, it kind of starts ripping things apart inside your body. So we need to have better technologies to protect our astronauts from radiation. Then gravity fields, they change, right? Moon doesn't have the same gravity, or even Mars doesn't have the same gravity as Earth. 1/6 and 1/3, no, 3/4. That's the gravities on those planets. So the changing gravity, how is that going to impact our body? Like I said, even in zero gravity, we lose a lot of bone and muscle. So how will that impact how do we protect, how do we mitigate that risk of the changing gravity fields? If astronauts lose a lot of bone, like osteoporosis is common in older people here on Earth, right? But astronauts lose bone at such a faster rate in just 6 months that it's not really going to be healthy for them, because when they go on these long duration missions that are not 6 months, this cannot, they will get really weak and they won't be able to perform their tasks if they lose a lot of bone and muscle. So today on the space station, astronauts exercise for 2.5 hours at least to get their bone and muscles activated. And that is why they have these longer durations of exercise to keep the bone and muscle healthy. But that is not enough. So can we find better technologies? Maybe you guys can think about these as research projects, research topics, and do some research on that, right? And publish some papers, and that will help us. So these are the challenges you can look into. Then the distance from the Earth increases, and with that, all these risks increase as well. And especially you're away from your loved ones. You are going to be in a confined environment, a closed environment constantly, be it the spacecraft, be it your habitat, be it your spacesuit. So that starts impacting your psychology. Being away from the people you love, being away from Earth, that starts impacting your psychology and eventually your performance. And so we need to figure out ways to keep our astronauts happy, excited, thrilled all the time. And I've been a part of analog missions, Mars mission, and a mission to the surface of an asteroid. So analog, that means we simulated those missions here on Earth. So I was locked down in a habitat for 14 days, both the times. And I could see how that could start impacting the psychology. It starts getting, initially there is that excitement that you're on a mission. But eventually when you're doing the same things over and over again, you're not able to experience the sunlight. You're not able to experience the fresh air. And then you're away from your loved ones. So that starts impacting your mind a little, and then it impacts your work eventually. This was only in 14 days. So imagine what will happen in 2 years, right? And then it's a hostile and closed environments, which is the confined environment I was talking. So these are the physio-psychological challenges that we have in a nutshell. And in these slides, I go into further detail on each of those, which we don't have the time for now. But what we have NASA doing right now is we've had these long duration missions. Until now, all the missions were, until this happened, all the missions to space station were like 6 months or 7 months at most. Now we are having astronauts go to the space station for a year and more to understand how, if you're exposed to all that extreme environment for that long, how does it affect your body and your mind? So to study that, this was the first one in 2015, where Scott Kelly and Mikhail Konyenko, they spent 340 days, almost a year, on the surface of on board the space station, basically. And then we've had these astronauts stay for these amount of days. So we are gradually building up on that data to see how longer durations in space affect the human body. But as you see, we cannot send a lot of people to the space station. It's really expensive as well. It requires a lot of resources. So it's not possible to send a lot of people. So we are sending few astronauts at a time and trying to test the impact of the extreme environment on the body. But how it impacts your mind, you can do that on the surface of the Earth. And that's what we're doing through these analog missions on Earth. We are putting people in these environments, in these habitats for longer durations. I started with the 14-day missions. There were 7-day missions before that. But now in this HERA, a Human Exploration and Research Analog, this is NASA's HERA mission or analog. Here at NASA's Johnson Space Center, I was a commander for one of the missions. Now NASA has been, since 2015 when I did this, NASA has been doing more 45-day missions because that gives you more data, right? It's like a longer duration. And then there are several other sites around the world, I haven't included all of them, where we are having these analog missions to understand the psychological impact of isolation and solitary confinement on the human performance. So yeah, these are the 2 missions I've been a commander for. This is NASA's HERA, Human Exploration Research Analog, that I talked about just now. And this is at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah here in the US. So was a commander for that as well. And I don't think we have enough time to go over all of this, but these are just a few pictures of the mission, HERA mission. And these are pictures from the Mars analog. And then, like I said, I've been a bioastronautics researcher and a scientist astronaut candidate for Project Possum. Some pictures from the training, some pictures from the research missions I've flown. And I can talk more about each of these pictures, but right now we are short on time, and I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So these are pictures from my research flights. And then I've also done land and sea survival and spacecraft emergency egress training. So these are some pictures. from that. Some couple of videos. I've been a part of a study, FAA study, Federal Aviation Administration study, where we were trying to understand, do we need to train civilians on experiencing high gravity forces? When you launch to space, you experience 5, 6, 4 times the gravitational force that we normally feel here when we are on Earth. It's 1G that we experience on a daily basis, right? But when you launch, you're fighting that force of gravity and launching into space. So you experience, every spacecraft experiences in different spacecrafts, basically, people will experience different forces of gravity. For example, the space shuttles, 4 Gs is what astronauts experienced. Here, if you see, I'm experiencing 4.4 Gs in one flight profile for one spacecraft, which was XCOR Lynx. That was the spacecraft. And then I flew another flight profile, Virgin Galactic Spaceship 1. No, this is Virgin Galactic Spaceship 1, in which I experienced 4 Gs. And in XCOR Lynx, I experienced these 6 Gs. So as the G forces increases, blood is pulled away from your brain, and your brain is deprived of oxygen. And so you can pass out, and everyone's body handles G forces differently. So we were trying to understand if we need to train people to handle those G forces. So you see how it's spinning, and in the end, thankfully, I haven't gotten nauseous or passed out. I'm still standing. So got to know that my body can handle G forces pretty well. And then this is the spacecraft egress survival training. I can't see anything. It's dark, and my spacecraft has crashed into the water. I'm buckled into my seatbelt, into my seat, so I have to unbuckle, get out without being able to see where I am, find the exit, and get out of the spacecraft. So it was a bit challenging because I've never been a swimmer until I started to pursue this goal, and so it was a bit challenging, but I was able to do it successfully. So that's one thing I like to do, challenge myself and see if I am really worthy of this astronaut goal. But it's also experience building, right? You get to experience those things, and you learn from those. You learn things about yourself, and it makes you stronger. And that is also one reason I like it. But that's about it. And I am on social media, so you can connect with me, ask me questions if we cannot get to all of them today, and I'll be happy to answer those. But yep, I hope you all enjoyed that. And let's start with the questions so that we can wrap up in like the next 10-15 minutes.
Yes, madam.
Abhay,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Yeah, you're most
Madam,
welcome.
Thank you very much for you. You have explained us a nice session, and we have really enjoyed in zero gravity as well as 4G when you have share your experience, and audience have definitely enjoyed, and whatever experience you have shared, definitely the students who are observing this will have their vision to take entry at such research centers through proper channel. And definitely as like you, many people from our country will have that that great opportunity, and they are really motivated through your talk, madam. We all of us are motivated, and definitely it will helpful for our teachers as well as students to get or grab such opportunities in future if they will get chance.
Yes, and actually, it's these are amazing times in the space industry right now. If you look at India's space research program as well, right? ISRO is going to launch astronauts in the Gagan. They're called the Gagannauts, right? So we have a human space flight program starting in ISRO as well. So opportunities are opening up for India, everyone in India there as well. A lot of students from India who come here in the US to pursue their aerospace engineering degree, and a lot of students in India who are pursuing aerospace engineering degree there, they do ask me how can they intern at NASA, can they work at NASA? And that's a challenge because NASA hires only people who are US citizens. I myself had to wait for almost 12 years till I became a citizen, and then I could get an opportunity to work for NASA. But the good thing now is in India, we have a lot, this human spaceflight program that ISRO has, but we also have a lot of small companies, startups coming up that are working in the space exploration and research arena. So yeah, there are a lot of good opportunities happening. And with the private space industry here in the US as well, ramping up, space industry is going to kind of keep growing right now.
Okay, madam. Now, those who want to ask the question, one hand is raised, Mr. Mayank Pagare. Mr. Mayank Pagare, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, good
Mr. Mayank.
good evening, ma'am.
Okay.
Hi,
Ask.
good evening. Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm 9th standard student.
Mhm.
I want to ask a question. Ma'am, can you please give me some information about Kepler mission?
Kepler mission, yes. Okay, I will not repeat what I said, but I will share something else. How did Kepler work? Like I said, it was a school bus sized telescope, right? It's retired now because it has lived its life and it's far away from Earth right now. It was in an heliocentric, that means orbiting the sun, Earth trailing, that means behind the Earth. It was an heliocentric Earth trailing orbit, and it has fallen behind the Earth now in its orbit. But yes, it completed its baseline mission and it did some more work, and now it's retired. But there is a new telescope now called the TESS, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, that was launched in 2018. It's doing the same work as Kepler, but it's looking at the entire sky for planets around stars. Kepler was focused only in one section, in the Cygnus and Lyra constellation of stars. It was looking at stars in that section to see if there are planets like the Earth around those stars. And how it was doing that was, Kepler had something called a spectrometer on board. What does spectrometer do? It measures the amount of light coming from a star or from an object, right? Spectrometer measures the amount of light. So that was basically a part of the camera on board Kepler. The camera was quite big. It could look, it had such a high focus, it could stare at stars up to 3,000 light years away. Do you believe that? It was that powerful. But yes, it kept staring at a star that we commanded it to look at. We gave it a set of stars we wanted it to study every quarter based on where the Earth was in its orbit and what stars we could look at properly in that constellation. So we gave it about 150,000 stars at a time were assigned to it to look at during that time frame. And it stared at each of the stars during that time assigned to measure the light coming from that star. So the transits that you look at, when it's measuring the amount of light, the light is coming as a straight curve in our software when we interpreted it in our software. So the light from the star is coming as a straight curve. Now a planet is coming in front of the star, right? When it's orbiting the star, the planet is in front of the star and Kepler is looking at the star and the planet comes in its way. What's going to happen? The planet is going to cut out some of the light that's coming from the star, right? It's going to cause the light to dim. So you see that as a drop in the light curve that we are measuring. It drops and then it comes back up again once the planet has crossed, and then it becomes a straight line again. So those dips, they are called transits. Those are what Kepler was gathering for us. And then astronomers and astrophysicists, they were looking at those to figure out the details of that planet around that star. But yes, Kepler, like I said, Kepler found a lot of habitable zone planets around M-dwarf stars and a lot of gigantic Jupiters, like way bigger than our Jupiter, and a lot of gigantic Neptune-sized planets as well. So now TESS has taken that work over. And then I don't know if you guys have followed NASA's James Webb Space Telescope that launched earlier this year, JWST. It's the most powerful and the biggest telescope NASA has launched, or we have launched as humanity. So what it's going to do is, it's going to do a lot of things, right? It has a lot of mission objectives. One of them is going to be to study the atmospheres of these stars that Kepler and TESS are finding that are in the habitable zones of their stars, the planets, I mean, to study the atmospheres of those planets that are in the habitable zone of their stars that Kepler and TESS has found. Why? Because if they study those atmospheres, they might see traces of water, oxygen, methane. These are all indicators that life might exist on the planet, right? If you look at Earth's atmosphere, and if you are an alien and you're looking through a telescope from light years away, you will see those traces of water and oxygen in our atmosphere, Earth's atmosphere. So same thing, JWST will be looking at on other planets that we think are in the habitable zone and might have liquid water on their surface. So that's what is about Kepler and the following work in a nutshell. I hope if that helps. Let me stop sharing. Okay, yeah, next question, please.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, madam. Now I found some questions in the chat box. Let me read it. Ms. Shraddha Jadhav has asked, in previous slide showing lunar base camp mission, this mission will work exception of space shuttle, or is it in stable state? Better I didn't understand this question, so that over to you, madam.
Shraddha, you might have to repeat that question, sweetie. But yes, there is no space shuttle involved in lunar mission. Okay, moon landing is true or fake? It's like, is Earth flat or round? That question, Rudraksh. So I think you should go on research on if Earth is flat or round. Yeah. What steps we should do for doing this field? Okay, sorry, go ahead. I'm just scrolling through the questions, Abhay sir, so that we save some time and we can wrap up by 9:30, which is 8 p.m.
You can you able to see the questions, madam?
Yes, I can. So Rutuja More asks what steps we should do for going to this field. And I love this field. I just want to go for this, but I still don't know what kind of study that I should do. So Rutuja, what area do you want to work in? That's what you have to figure out first. So there are several areas. What are you doing right now? I don't know. But science, technology, engineering, math, these are the fields that will get you anything in. Like, you can be a software engineer and even work in space organizations, because we have a lot of, all our spacecrafts today are going to be automated, right? They are automated. So we need software engineers for spacecrafts, or even here on ground, we have these mission control centers. We need engineers to work, to design or help us design those. So there you can become a systems engineer, you can become an aerospace engineer. So it's all up to you. What is your area of interest? Find that out and then pursue a bachelor's degree in that. And then if you want, you can pursue a master's, a PhD in that. So you become an expert in that selected field of your choice, right? And then while you're doing your bachelor's, look for opportunities to gain knowledge, more knowledge. In addition to your education, try to do extracurricular things that will help you build up on this. NASA has always had challenges put out for students on the NASA website. Even ISRO has started doing that these days. So get into those kind of challenges, projects. We've seen Indian teams from India come here in competitions and they get picked for some of these NASA challenges that I'm talking about. So they get an opportunity to put a project together, present it here. It's a short trip, but they get that experience, right? So try to gain those kind of experiences while you are studying as well. But yes, what degree you need to pursue, you will have to figure that out based on your area of interest. But there is a lot of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, systems, and all sorts of engineering. You can come and work here. Work in any space organization. I don't want to say work here. You need to be a US citizen to work here in NASA. But yeah, any space organization in India even, you can do that. But yeah, I hope I answered your question. You feel that 1 year in space, but the budget is so much to take anything. So what is the solution on that? The solution, so the question is that it takes 1 year in space, longer actually. Budget is a lot, yes. To launch anything from the surface of Earth. The more stuff you want to launch, the more expensive it's going to get, right? Because it's heavy, you need to fight gravity and lift it off. So the solution is, so that we don't have to, because there is a limitation on how much payload, it's called payload, whatever you're launching, that is called payload. Because there is a restriction on the amount of payload we can launch, the best solution for Moon and Mars mission is to establish what we call the sustainable bases on those, on Mars and Moon, on those surfaces. Why? Once you have sustainable base, that means you're using the resources on the surface of that Moon or that planet, that is Mars, to make things that the astronauts can use and become independent of Earth, right? So like I said, there is water, but it's in ice form. Take that, process it, make it drinkable. Start growing things on Moon and Mars, use that for food. And there is research in this. On the space station, we're growing food already. We're growing salads, we're growing tomatoes. So these kind of experiments are already going on. And now, I don't know if you guys have, how much you follow NASA's social media, but there was one article about NASA has been successful in growing plants or saplings at least in the lunar regolith, the lunar soil that came from the Apollo missions. So Apollo missions had collected some lunar soil samples, and we have successfully grown little saplings. We've had success in germinating seeds and growing little saplings in that lunar soil. So see, we're working on that. So we can set up greenhouses on Moon and Mars. So establishing a sustainable base is really important. This is called in situ resource utilization. In situ resource utilization means use the resources that are available where you go, be it the Moon or Mars, and put them to work for you. So you can start becoming independent and not relying on Earth anymore. Okay, that is answered. I'm studying electronics and telecommunications engineering. Good job, Rutuja. So continue pursuing that and see what is the work that we do in all of these areas in space. How will it apply to space? Because of course, electronics and telecom is a big part of building any spacecraft or any system that will help monitor the spacecrafts as well, right? So that's good. You're on the right track. Just now, what you need to research on is what in space is applicable to electronics and engineering, and what kind of a job can you find that will help you work in this. So that's a research you need to do. Okay. So yeah, and there are plenty of resources out there. Trust me, compared to what I had today, you all are lucky. You have a lot of resources available. So yeah, do that research. Behind every is a team of scientists to analyze to make the discovery happen. What do you know about work that goes on to each of these pretty pictures? Good question, Yash. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, NASA always says this. Behind every pretty space image, we have a team of scientists that analyze the data. And I've worked with those kind of scientists, right? When I worked on the Kepler mission, especially. And then there are artists that take that data or that information from the scientists, and they render those pictures and they make it available so that the public can imagine what are these planets, for example, because we're talking about Kepler. How do they look? So it's an artist's rendering of the information that the scientists give them, and the scientists get that information from the spacecraft. And we are the people, engineers. I was one of the engineers who was helping process that data that was coming from the Kepler telescope. So we were the team of engineers actually working on the processing of that data, and we were the products that came out from our processing. We were making those available to the scientists and the astronauts, and then they were using that to tell us if there are planets and help us come up with all the information in the end. So yeah, I have worked with those people, and it's a mixed team of, we were the engineers, there were scientific programmers as well. They use MATLAB to process the scientific, to write and the scientific algorithms that process the scientific part of that data. And We were the software engineers who built the data processing pipeline and helped process it and run it on the supercomputer and all that stuff in the background that produces these products that our scientists can use. So, good questions. And I think that's about it. Tabassum Mulani has a question. She has a raised hand. So Tabassum, let's take your question as the last one and wrap it up.
Okay. Madam Tabassum Mulani, please ask question. So it will be last question of the session. Mulani madam.
You're on mute, Tabassum, if you're talking. Unmute yourself, please. Okay, looks like she's not there anymore.
Any more questions? Let us we'll take the last question if somebody want to ask. Okay. I think madam there are no further questions. So thank you very much, madam. It was very nice session and nice question answering also after the end of the session.
You're most welcome. That was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We are very happy to listen to you from NASA, and we have enjoyed the session. And in future also, if we'll get opportunity, definitely we'll like to interact with you. And one more thing, one invitation on behalf of Karmayogi Engineering College.
Thank you.
By chance, whenever you will come in India, definitely please visit the Pandharpur and you will get the darshan of Lord Vitthal Rukmini.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Okay. So we are at the end of session. Now I request Professor Jagdish Mudegaonkar, who is Vice Principal of the Institute, to please propose a vote of thanks. Mudegaonkar sir. Mudegaonkar sir. Hello, your mic is on mute, Mudegaonkar sir. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Mudegaonkar sir.
Sir, please give me one chance. Upat sir, is it audible?
Patil madam, Mulani madam, once again, she want to ask the question. Actually, we will take it.
My. Good night, ma'am. Is it audible?
Yeah. I can hear you.
My question is that at NASA, is there any research that the body can attain the velocity of light?
No, there is no such research. Body can attend. If we can come up with a spacecraft that can attend the velocity of light, that will be cool enough. But body, no research.
Okay. It was very nice session, ma'am, and very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So, very warm good evening to all on the behalf of Karmayogi Engineering College, Shedwe, Pandharpur. I am glad to be standing here to express my vote of thanks. A special thanks to our today's chief guest, Mrs. Alima Patil ma'am, for accepting our invitation and delivering wonderful webinar. Madam, your thoughts and work experience have truly inspired us. I am also thankful to Mr. Abhijit Aradhe sir for their cooperation and coordination to make this webinar successful. I am expressing my thanks to our trustee, Mr. Rohan Paricharak Malak, and our beloved principal, Dr. S.P. Patil sir, for their kind support for organizing this event. I would like to thank Mr. Abhay Utpat sir, Mr. Rahul Pancha, Mr. Dhananjay Shupuje, Mr. Anil Babar, Mr. Vijay Madne, Mr. Abhinandan Deshmane, Mr. Ashish Joshi, and all teaching and non-teaching faculties. I am also thankful to our technical team for their efforts. And last but not the least, I am also thankful to all respected invitees who attended this session, the newspaper reporters, students, and parents for being with us and making the day wonderful and memorable. Thank you once again, and thanks to all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Thank you.
So,
All right.
madam, thank you.
guys. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have action once again in future whenever required.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, so information of DIAS, can we end the session, madam?
Yes. Have a great weekend and see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Bye, ma'am.
So, Gule sir,
Yes. Hello.
you can end the meeting now.
Yes, sir. Okay.